Exhausted and surrounded, alien guardian braced for death. Then human technician whispered, "You're not alone." The reliquary was a mausoleum. Naira pressed her back to the fractured pillar, battered armor smeared with blood, both hers and the enemy's. Her heart pounded with a desperate, ferocious rhythm, drowning out the distant, echoing clicks that grew louder by the breath. The chitinous stalkers advanced through the shattered chamber, their obsidian forms glinting in the lurid half-light. Serrated limbs scraped stone and bone alike, the sound thickening the air with dread. She was out of time. Pride and fatigue wrestled in her chest as she forced herself upright, knees trembling. Twin arc blades shimmered in her hands, casting eerie blue lines across her gauntlets. The stench of scorched plasma stung her lungs with each ragged breath, mingling with the metallic taste of blood. The main gate was gone, a jagged wound in the sanctum's heart. Through it poured annihilation, a tide of hunger and spite. Nira braced for her last stand, vision tunneling, senses narrowed to the seething mass of shadows at the threshold. The enemy came on, relentless, the sound of their approach like a swarm of knives. Suddenly, a rough hand seized her shoulder from behind. She twisted, but her reflex was sluggish. Another hand closed around her wrist, dragging her away from the open floor. She glimpsed a seam in the wall that hadn't existed moments before, a slice of blackness in the pale stone. Before she could protest, she was yanked into darkness. For a moment, the only thing she heard was her own pulse, thunderous in her ears. The world shrank to the press of bodies and the rasp of breath. She struggled, but the grip was firm, steady, a lifeline, not a threat. A faint glow flickered. She recognized the profile of Marcus, the human technician she'd dismissed as a liability only hours before, awkward, clumsy, out of place in a war shrine. He let go of her arm and whispered, "You're not alone in this." Before she could find her voice, a deep rumble shook the chamber. Marcus slammed his palm against a device on his wrist. A shudder ran through the stone. Outside, the clicker's advance faltered. Then, with a teeth-rattling detonation, the entryway collapsed. Stone crashed against stone, dust billowed, and the shrieks of the stalkers were abruptly cut off, replaced by silence so complete it rang in her ears. Naira staggered, instinct drawing her blade in a gleaming arc to Marcus's throat. He didn't flinch. His eyes, shadowed but steady, were fixed on the heap of debris. "What have you done?" she demanded, voice raw. "Bought us time," he said. "They violated this place first. I just evened the scales." He flicked his wrist. A hologram blossomed in the gloom. The sanctuary, rendered in ghostly lines and swirling lights, all its secrets exposed as intricate machinery rather than hallowed relic. Nira's jaw clenched. "You have profaned the sacred ground." "You have entombed us," she hissed, pressing the blade closer to his skin. "I've kept you alive," Marcus replied. His voice was unwavering, an unexpected steel in the tone. "And this place is more than a shrine. It's a device, and I'm going to show you how to wield it." For a moment, neither moved. Naira's blade trembled, torn between loyalty and the primal urge to survive. Her vows warred against the unyielding logic of the moment. In the gloom, Marcus's face was stark with resolve, but there was no triumph, only urgency and a flicker of hope. She lowered the blade, arm heavy with exhaustion. Marcus's gaze swept over her, pausing at her left forearm, where blood streamed in a steady line, soaking the leather beneath. "First, let's fix that," he said quietly. "You're no use to me dead." Naira tensed as he took her arm. His hands, smeared with grime, were unexpectedly gentle, deft fingers brushing away the dirt, applying a coagulant patch with practiced care. He worked in silence, his breath brushing her skin, the moment intimate despite the roaring chaos outside their barricade. For a heartbeat, the touch was something else. Not utilitarian, not duty-bound, but kind. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt such a thing. Their eyes met. In the hush, something passed between them. Fragile, uncertain, real. Marcus broke the silence. The reliquary's gravitic columns. They're dormant, but I can wake them. Reroute the core, collapse the chamber onto the swarm. Naira recoiled, face twisting in horror. To use the sanctum itself as a weapon? That's blasphemy, Marcus finished. I know, but it's also the only way. They'll break through again, and when they do, they'll devour us both. This place, your people built it to protect, not just to mourn. She glared at the hologram, heart pounding. Logic gnawed at her. Her oath was to defend, to endure. Was this not the ultimate test? Very well, she said at last, voice hoarse. I will draw them in. Make sure your promise is worth the price. Marcus nodded, respect softening the tension in his jaw. Rest while you can, he said. We move soon. She leaned back against the cool stone, eyes never leaving him. Marcus crouched nearby, fingers flying over the console, muttering calculations and prayers alike. Naira let her blades rest at her sides, mind racing, exhaustion tugging her down. She watched him, this strange, resourceful human, and felt something she thought lost. Amidst blood and ruin, a spark of hope flared, and disturbingly, curiosity. The vast ceremonial corridor stretched ahead, columns like the trunks of ancient trees rising up and vanishing into gloom. Along each pillar, Zevran legends curled in silver script, glinting faintly with the light from Marcus's relay. Dust motes shimmered in the air, undisturbed for generations, until now. Marcus and Naira crouched together at the edge of shadow and brilliance, his hands working over the humming signal relay, her body tense with readiness. The corridor was wide enough to swallow an army, but the space they occupied, a shallow alcove tucked between two pillars, was cramped. Naira felt the press of his shoulder against hers, the warmth of his body seeping through the battered plates of her armor. She hated how much comfort she drew from it, how in the narrow hush she could almost forget the swarm gathering beyond the ruined gates. A flicker of movement in the darkness ahead sent a ripple down her spine. Her grip tightened on the arc blade, knuckles white. Marcus's hand stilled on the relay, his head turning until his lips were near her ear. They're coming, he whispered, voice low, the faintest tremor of fear or excitement in it. His breath stirred the fine silver hair at her temple, a touch both intimate and urgent. Something massive. Naira's heart skipped. She knew what it meant, the tremor in the floor, the sudden hush of lesser chitinous limbs. A devourer, she breathed, dread settling like a stone in her chest. Marcus's gaze found hers in the gloom. The plan will work, he assured her, tone flat with certainty. Oddly, it calmed her. His faith in calculation, in machinery, in her. In this moment, his certainty felt like the only thing that could be trusted. She forced herself to focus, running through the plan once more. I draw them to the dais, she murmured. I plant the relay. I run. She glanced down at the humming device in his hands, a tangle of wires and crystalline nodes. You trigger the collapse once the swarm's in range. He nodded, his hand finding her forearm, squeezing, firm, grounding. Just come back, Guardian. The words were simple, but they rooted her, steadied her. A fleeting smile passed between them, brief as a heartbeat, but it lingered in the tightness of her chest. She rose, the brush of his hand a phantom on her skin, and stepped from the alcove into the corridor's yawning expanse. The silence was absolute, oppressive, until she triggered the arc blade. Its resonant hum sang through the chamber, a clarion challenge to the darkness beyond. From the far end, shadows surged. The devourer was first, towering, armored, its maw a nightmare of gleaming fangs. Stalkers poured in its wake, claws scrabbling, mandibles clattering in a symphony of hunger. Naira ran, the echo of her boots swallowed by the cacophony behind her. She was a blur of lavender and silver, darting between the pillars, the horde thundering in pursuit. At the dais, she skidded to a halt. The platform loomed, carved with symbols older than memory. She dropped to one knee, planting the relay at its heart, fingers flying as she armed the device. The swarm surged closer. She could smell their fetid breath, taste the static of their rage. "Come on," she whispered, slapping the final seal. The relay pulsed, light threading through the floor in branching veins. The devourer lunged, and she dove sideways, rolling into the shadows beneath the dais as the swarm crashed onto the platform. Bodies piled atop bodies, obsidian shells glinting with blood and spittle. Her comm crackled. Marcus's voice cut through the panic, calm, precise, a lifeline. "Wait. Now!" She triggered the command. The reliquary answered. Gravitic columns awoke with a bellow, pistons slamming down in a cascade of thunder. Stone and metal crushed the swarm in a wave of merciless power. The devourer shrieked, limbs flailing, but was dragged under by its own kind. The sound was deafening, an end-of-world roar, and then, nothing. Naira lay still for a moment, heart hammering, the silence ringing in her ears. Then a familiar figure sprinted into view, relief and tension etched in every line. Marcus knelt at her side, hands hovering before daring to touch her. "Phase 1's done," he said, voice tight with adrenaline. He scanned her for wounds, fingers tracing the edge of her battered pauldron. "You did great, Naira." The praise caught her off guard. She met his eyes, saw the honest admiration there, and felt a flush of pride, a warmth that meant more than it should have. Before she could reply, the corridor shook again. Alarms flared, crimson light painting their faces in urgent streaks. Marcus's pad vibrated in his hand, screens flickering with data streams. He frowned, scanning the feed. "They're adapting, the horde splitting, converging on the sanctum's core." He tapped rapidly, overlaying a map of the reliquary's inner sanctum, corridors pulsing with hostile signatures. He turned to her, urgency sharpening his features. "What's at the center? What are they after?" Naira's expression closed. She straightened, brushing dust from her knees, jaw tight. "It is the Soul Stone," she said, voice formal. "The source of all life for my people. A sacred trust, old as the stars, guarded for generations." Marcus's face darkened, tension radiating from him like heat. "It's not a blessing," he said, almost to himself. "It's a generator. That's what they're here for. They want to activate it." She stared at him, the weight of his words settling in, shifting the ground beneath everything she had believed. For the first time, she wondered if the reliquary's greatest secret was not what it protected, but what it might unleash. Marcus's fingers flew across the cracked surface of his pad, sweat beading on his brow as he spliced line after line of code into the horde's network. The device hummed, its screen flickering between layers of encrypted language and shifting alien symbols. Each breath he took was shallow, sharp, pressure building, time collapsing around him. Naira stood sentinel at his back, her blade drawn and shimmering with barely restrained energy. The air between them was thick with tension and something sharper, rawer, the knowledge that their choices now would shape not just the battle, but the fate of everything sacred to her. Every so often, her gaze would flick from the shadowy hall beyond to the human crouched at her feet, her expression torn between wariness and hope and a simmering, silent accusation. A flood of data rushed onto Marcus's screen. Streams of hive code unfolded before him, no longer random, no longer animal. He frowned, parsing the patterns, tracing their logic. "It's a search protocol," he muttered, mostly to himself. "They're not moving by instinct, they're hunting for something specific." Naira's jaw tightened. "For what?" He tapped and swiped, overlaying the energy signatures from the hive with the readings from the sanctum's core. The match was unmistakable, glowing on the screen like a wound. They're scanning for a particular energy pattern. It matches the core exactly. His voice was hollow with realization. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Years ago, when the first expedition had come, when he and his team had swept the reliquary with high-powered sensors, searching for the secret at its heart. He remembered the anomaly, a pulse of readings so far beyond baseline that they'd archived it as a curiosity, something to analyze later. He remembered, too, the spike in alien activity that followed. His mouth went dry. He dug through the archives, fingers trembling, and found the old logs. The anomaly. The warning it triggered. The signal echoing outward. A beacon no one had realized they'd lit. He stared at the screen, horror rising in his chest. "Naira," he whispered, voice breaking. "I brought them here." She spun, eyes narrowing. "What are you saying?" He showed her the evidence: log files, data streams, survey reports marked with his signature. The scan, years ago. We thought it was just a reading, but it triggered the hive. We called them. All of this, his voice faltered. "It's my fault." Naira's world shuddered, cracked. For so long she had carried her losses, the fallen guardians, the defiled sanctum, the endless dead, as burdens given by fate or by the malice of the swarm. Now, in a single instant, it all collapsed into a single human error. Her face contorted, grief and rage pouring through her. "You—" The word was a knife. She lashed out, slamming her fists against his chest and shoulders, arc blade forgotten. Blow after blow landed, pain flaring in her arms and in his. But he did not defend himself. He took her fury in silence, eyes open, guilt unyielding. She broke, collapsing against him, sobs racking her body. For the first time since the carnage began, she allowed herself to mourn, to shudder, to weep. Marcus wrapped his arms around her, awkward at first, then tightening, as if he could absorb her anguish and bear it with her. He held her until the tremors in her body subsided, until her breathing slowed, until her head rested on his shoulder and her tears dried on his tunic. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry." He knew it was not enough. It never could be. She pulled away, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Her eyes were changed, no longer the eyes of the sentinel who believed in destiny, but those of a survivor, cold and unyielding. "Your life is mine now," she said, voice low and hard. "You will fix this, or die trying." Marcus nodded, meeting her gaze. "I wouldn't have it any other way." For a moment, only their breathing filled the shattered chamber. Then Naira drew from her belt a small, battered case. She flipped it open to reveal a fragment of ancient alloy, etched with Zevran glyphs, lines and curves forming a pattern that shimmered in the half-light. She set it between them. "The glyph of opening," she murmured. "Passed down through generations. I never understood its meaning, until now." Marcus studied the lines, his technical mind parsing the impossible geometry. "It's a schematic," he said slowly. "A blueprint for the core." Naira nodded. "The elders called it the Heart's Map. They said it was the key to the Soul Stone. Only a true guardian could read it." He traced a path with his finger. "These aren't just symbols. They're circuits, energy routes, modulation nodes for a containment system." His eyes widened. "The Soul Stone isn't just a relic, it's a terraforming engine. Whoever controls it can remake the world," Naira finished, horror dawning. "In the wrong hands, it's a weapon." As if on cue, the pad in Marcus's hand pinged. A new signal, larger, more complex, moving through the horde with purpose. He magnified the feed, and an icy certainty settled in his gut. "The Hive Matron," he said. "She's coming for you, Naira. The Guardians are the key. She needs you to unlock the core." They stared at each other, the enormity of their situation pressing down. Naira's blade dipped, shoulders squaring with resolve. Then we give her nothing. I will channel my energy into the core, overload it, destroy it if I must. Marcus's brow furrowed, already calculating. The backlash would kill you. Unless... He began sketching lines on his pad, overlaying containment protocols. I can build a field, a containment matrix. It'll buy you time to channel the overload, redirect the surge. She studied him, seeing not just the guilt, but the resolve, the determination. You would trust me with this? I have to, he said. You're the only one who can do this. And I need to make this right. They moved with desperate urgency, side by side before the core's ancient doors. Marcus scavenged what he could, relay nodes, energy couplers, fragments of Zevran tech and human ingenuity fused together in wild improvisation. Nira guided his hands with her own, steadying him, correcting where Zevran lore diverged from human logic. Here, she said, pointing to a node. The energy will want to flow out, not in, reverse the polarity. Marcus grinned, a spark of pride flickering. You're a natural engineer. She almost smiled, but her eyes were intent, fierce. And you, human, have the soul of a guardian. They worked in a feverish silence, sweat mingling with dust and blood. Each connection was a risk, every adjustment, a leap of faith. At times their hands brushed, fingers tangling as they reached for the same component. Heat rose between them, born not only of adrenaline, but of respect, of need, of the fragile trust that had been forged in the crucible of disaster. As the field took shape, Naira closed her eyes, focusing her will. Energy flared around her, the ancient glyph glowing in response. She felt Marcus beside her, his hands steady at her back, his breath calm in her ear. You're not alone, he said, and this time she believed him. In that moment, faith and logic intertwined, unbreakable. The core thrummed beneath them, power building, the storm about to break. Amid the ruins of old belief and the ashes of fresh guilt, Naira and Marcus faced the darkness, not as strangers, but as partners. Their plan was desperate, their hope, thin as the edge of a blade. But in each other, they found the courage to defy fate itself. A psychic tremor vibrated through the stone, setting the floor beneath Marcus and Naira's feet humming with invisible menace. The warning rippled up through ancient foundations, a vibration that did not so much shake the air as seep into their bones, a sensation like icy fingers sliding beneath the skin. Marcus flinched, feeling the alien pressure claw at his consciousness, scraping the edges of his thoughts. Somewhere deeper in the reliquary, the hive matron was near, her will gathering like a storm cloud. He checked the containment field again, hands trembling. The jury-rigged shield flickered around them, threads of blue and gold threatening to unravel with every fresh pulse from the matron. Sweat ran down his temples, his breath tight with effort. He glanced at Naira, who was kneeling in the center of the sigil, palms pressed to the glyph, shoulders squared despite the tremor that ran through her frame. 5 more minutes, Marcus breathed, as if pleading with the universe, or the shield itself. Just 5 more, come on! The pressure intensified, and he staggered, his vision blurring at the edges. His thoughts frayed, memories flickering. Childhood laughter, a first taste of loss. Naira's voice in the dark. In a lull between psychic waves, he reached out, his hand trembling as he gently touched Naira's cheek. The pad of his thumb brushed her lavender skin, warm and impossibly smooth. And for a heartbeat, the world shrank to that single point of contact. Her eyes, violet and pupilless, shimmered with unshed tears. Sorry isn't enough, Marcus whispered, voice ragged. But I won't fail you again. Naira leaned into his touch, closing her eyes as a tear traced down her cheek. The simple, silent gesture said what words could not: acceptance, and something deeper, fragile and fierce. Her voice came out thick with feeling, trembling with a strength born of heartbreak. See that you don't, human. He held her gaze, the air between them charged, until another surge from the matron sent static crackling through the shield. Marcus pulled his hand away, and the loss of contact left Naira chilled, her skin prickling in the cold that followed his warmth. The matron's presence grew more urgent, filling the tunnels with an inescapable sense of dread and inevitability. Marcus's jaw clenched. He forced a grin, voice low. Time to show them what happens when you corner those with nothing left to lose. They moved together, urgency binding them as tightly as any vow. Marcus led the way into the labyrinthine maintenance tunnels, the walls slick with condensation and etched with forgotten Zevran runes. Every intersection hummed with menace, the matron's psychic weight focusing ahead, a beacon of predatory intent. They could feel her mind searching, sifting through stone and memory, drawing the swarm to her will. As they turned a corner, shadows coalesced into towering forms, devourers, their exoskeletons glistening, stalkers weaving in and out of the gloom on spindly legs. The swarm blocked the main corridor, mandibles clattering, eyes like burning coals. Marcus hissed, scanning their options. This way! He grabbed Naira's arm, dragging her toward a battered access panel half hidden by rubble. He yanked the cover off, revealing a narrow shaft lined with corroded metal. Old exhaust should connect to the lower levels. He dropped in first, boots ringing on the metal rungs, then reached up for Naira. She hesitated only a moment before following, lowering herself into the darkness. The shaft was barely wide enough for them to move. Their shoulders scraped metal, dust choking their lungs. The psychic pressure pressed down, a constant ache at the back of their minds, fraying their nerves as they descended. Halfway down, a tremor rattled the shaft. Marcus lost his grip, tumbling the last few meters. Naira dropped after him, landing in a crouch. He winced, clutching his arm, bruised, not broken. They rolled out into the gloom of the lower level, just as the swarm above closed in, claws raking at the shaft's entrance. Stalkers prowled the darkness, their bodies little more than sinuous shadows. Naira ignited her blades, twin arcs of violet energy flaring to life. The light painted her face in warlike hues, making her seem both unearthly and invincible. Marcus took cover behind a shattered pillar, readying an explosive charge. "Keep them off me," he called, voice taut. Naira surged forward, her grief and fury channeled into every strike. The stalkers attacked as one, their speed blinding, but she was faster, a tempest of movement and light. She parried a lashing claw, pivoted, and drove her blade into the stalker's thorax. Sparks exploded as obsidian shell met Zevran steel. Another beast leapt for her throat. She ducked, spinning low, blade sweeping through legs and sending it crashing to the floor. Marcus drew fire, tossing a compact grenade. The explosion lit the chamber, shattering a cluster of stalkers that had cornered Naira. Debris rained down. He covered his head, coughing in the dust. "Go!" he shouted, waving her onward. "You have to reach the core. I'll cover you." A devourer crashed through the rubble, its bulk filling the corridor. It reared, claws ready to eviscerate, and lunged. Marcus didn't hesitate. He darted left, drawing the monster's attention, leading it away from Naira. It slammed a limb down, missing him by inches, pulverizing the stone where he had stood. Naira hesitated, torn, every instinct screaming to protect him. He caught her eye across the battlefield, blood streaking his temple, his jaw set in stubborn defiance. "Don't look back, Naira," Marcus roared, his voice a lifeline through the chaos. "Go!" She forced herself to move, sprinting past the carnage, blades trailing violet light in her wake. The psychic storm intensified as she neared the sanctum's core, each step harder than the last, the matron's mind brushing hers, ancient and monstrous and hungry. Behind her, Marcus fought like a man possessed, ducking, dodging, making every second count. He hurled another explosive, clearing a path as the devourer bore down, unrelenting. Naira's feet pounded the stone, grief and hope fused into a single desperate rhythm. She did not dare look back. Not as she reached the threshold of the core chamber, not as Marcus's final shout echoed through the halls, raw and commanding. She ran, faster than she ever had, carrying the last of their hope into the heart of the storm. Naira burst into the core chamber, stumbling through a haze of psychic static. Her lungs heaved, every muscle screaming, but she barely registered her body. The crystalline soul stone towered at the chamber's heart, suspended in a lattice of ancient metal, its facets pulsing with a radiance that was at once beautiful and utterly alien. The light fractured and reformed with every heartbeat, casting shifting patterns over the scorched floor. And there, looming above the dais, fused grotesquely to the core's anchoring spires, waited the hive matron. Its massive insectoid form had merged with the conduits, flesh and chitin braided with glowing Zevran circuitry. Where its torso met the soul stone, energy bled in shimmering rivers. The matron's head, crowned with a diadem of writhing antennae, swiveled with ponderous inevitability to face Naira. Its psychic presence descended like a curtain, filling the chamber with a pressure so intense Naira staggered, knees nearly buckling. A voice, vast and terrible, boomed in her mind. Not words, but a presence so overwhelming it was as if the stone itself spoke. "The key is here." Naira clenched her jaw, forced herself upright. Psychic claws scraped at her thoughts, dredging up memories and fears, trying to root her to the spot. She refused to yield. Shoving aside the agony, she sprinted to the core, her blade slipping from numb fingers as she pressed both hands to the crystal surface. Energy surged into her, cold, then blistering, threatening to tear her apart. For a split second she felt everything, every Zevran memory imprinted in the crystal, every echo of loss and love and death. Her mind reeled, and she felt herself begin to splinter. A crackle in her calm, faint but stubborn. Marcus's voice, battered but alive. "Channel everything into the ignition array. Now, Naira, don't hold back. Trust me." His words anchored her, a thin thread of hope through the hurricane. Naira gritted her teeth and found the center of herself. She gathered her will, her pain, her fury, her desperate longing for a future she could scarcely imagine. She poured her essence into the core, letting the boundaries between her body and the crystal dissolve. The soul stone blazed, erupting in a shaft of white light that stabbed through the matron's body. The alien shrieked, voice shattering the air and sending shards of psychic agony through Naira's skull. The matron tried to pull back, but the crystal drank hungrily at its energy, ripping power from the creature's grasp. The matron retaliated. A bladed limb, impossibly swift, lashed across the chamber, striking as the doors behind Naira slammed open. Marcus burst in, battered and bleeding, detonator clutched in one hand. He hurled himself toward Naira, only to be caught mid-stride. The matron's limb impaled him, pinning him to the wall like a broken doll. Blood welled and pooled beneath him, red stark against the pallid stone. Naira's scream echoed off the vaulted ceiling, raw and primal. Her soul fractured at the sight, agony doubling her over. The psychic onslaught faltered, then redoubled, waves of despair and mockery. "You are alone," the matron taunted, its voice splintering through the chamber. "Broken, the last. Your kind will fade, and I will remake this world in my image." Naira's grief became a storm. She braced herself against the core, tears streaming down her face, heart shattering and reforging in the crucible of loss. She looked up, saw Marcus's eyes, clouded with pain, but still fierce, still believing in her. "You are wrong," she said, voice trembling but unbowed. "We are not broken." She unleashed everything. Her being fused with the core, her thoughts, her memories, her love, her anger, her hope, spilled into the matrix. The glyph at her feet flared, ancient Zevran code blazing to life. She felt Marcus in the circuit, his faith woven through her own will, their partnership the final key. The Soul Stone exploded in radiance, light pouring outward in a wave that obliterated shadow and pain alike. The matron's psychic scream was cut short, its form dissolving into motes of brilliance, energy torn from its grasp and returned to the heart of the world. For a heartbeat, Naira existed as pure energy, beyond sorrow, beyond fear, beyond even love. There was only the pulse of creation, the infinite possibility of what could be. Then all fell silent and dark. Naira awakened beneath a lattice of shattered stone and crystalline debris, every muscle quivering, her thoughts slow and fogged. Pain radiated through her body, dull at first, then sharp enough to make her gasp as sensation returned. She blinked, vision swimming with motes of fading light, the echo of the core's radiance still burning in her bones. For a long, still moment, she simply breathed, the weight of survival pressing down on her chest. She was battered, hollowed out, but alive. Around her, the core chamber lay in ruins. The Soul Stone's glow was a faint ember now, flickering weakly beneath heaps of rubble and twisted metal. Silence pressed in, broken only by the faint, ragged sound of her own breath and the distant, fading memory of the matron's scream. Then, a sound. A faint groan, hoarse and pained, threading through the gloom. Marcus. Naira's heart jolted. She shoved aside a broken beam, stone scraping her forearm raw, and crawled across the debris. Her limbs trembled with exhaustion, every motion a battle, but she would not be stopped. She followed the sound, the hope in her chest swelling and breaking with each inch she gained. At last, she found him. Marcus lay half-buried under fallen masonry, his body twisted awkwardly. The matron's bladed talon was still lodged in his side, dark blood oozing around the wound. His shirt was slick with it, the color too vivid against his pallid skin. His eyes fluttered, unfocused, breath shuddering through clenched teeth. "Marcus," she whispered, voice cracked and raw. He groaned again, his head lolling toward her. "Naira?" The syllables were slurred, but the relief in them was unmistakable. She cradled his head in her lap, shifting debris from his torso with trembling hands. Her touch was gentle, desperate, as she tore strips from her ruined cloak and pressed them to the wound, doing what she could to slow the bleeding. Her own blood dripped onto him, mixing with his, but she ignored it, focused only on the human in her arms. "Stay with me," she urged, voice shaking as tears welled in her eyes. "You're safe." "I have you." She brushed a lock of hair from his brow, fingers lingering on the familiar curve of his jaw. Marcus's eyes fluttered open, cloudy and pained. For a moment, he seemed to drift, then his gaze sharpened. "Did we?" His lips barely moved, but the hope behind the question was palpable. "We did," Naira said, her voice thick with relief and grief, and something softer. "It's over. The horde is gone. The matron, she's finished." Tears streaked her cheeks, leaving pale tracks through the grime. "You did it, Marcus. You kept your promise." A smile flickered at the corners of his mouth, pain etched in every line of his face. "Good," he managed, voice barely a whisper. "That's good." His head lolled against her lap, eyes drifting closed, but he forced them open again, refusing to leave her just yet. Naira's fingers traced the line of his jaw, slow and reverent, her gaze searching his face as if memorizing every feature. She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his, a Zevran gesture reserved for the deepest bonds. Her breath mingled with his, the space between them vanishing. "You are a fool, Marcus," she murmured, the words trembling with emotion. "A stubborn, reckless, impossible fool." He laughed, a faint broken sound, but genuine. "Takes one to know one, Guardian." A tear slipped down her cheek and landed on his lips. He tasted salt and smiled, weak but brighter. She kissed his brow, her lips feather-light against his skin, then drew back to look at him. Really look, as if seeing him for the first time, not as a liability or a mistake, but as her fierce protector, her unlikely savior, her foolish human. "Why did you come back?" she whispered. "You could have escaped. You could have left me." He coughed, pain rippling through him, but managed a crooked smile. "Wasn't an option. Not for me." His fingers found hers, squeezing weakly. "Told you I'd keep you alive. Had to keep my promise." She squeezed his hand in return, her own strength flowing into the gesture. "You did, even when I didn't want you to." They sat together in the darkness, the weight of everything lost pressing in on them, the world above reduced to distant memory. The soul stone's glow faded to a gentle pulse, barely illuminating the ruin around them. Yet in that small circle of light, there was warmth, a fragile, stubborn spark that refused to die. Naira held Marcus close, rocking him gently. Her armor was cracked, her blade lost, her world in ruins. But for the first time, she felt something new, something stronger than hope. She was not alone. Not anymore. She pressed her cheek to his temple, tears soaking into his hair. "Rest now, Marcus. I am here. I will not leave you." He sighed, the tension in his body ebbing. "Don't. Let go," he murmured, voice drifting. "Never," she promised. And so they remained, the last of Zevra and her impossible human, entwined amid the rubble and fading light. The sound of their breathing, the warmth of their bodies pressed together. These were all that was left, and all that truly mattered. He had kept his promise. She was not alone. That's the end of the story. You can leave us a tip or become a channel member. This greatly helps our team improve the quality of our videos. You can send a tip using the Super Thanks button right below the video. We truly appreciate each and every one of you who has subscribed and supported us. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.